Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So here recently, something very interesting has been happening with the Xbox Series X and S. One thing that we really have seen a lot throughout this generation are those supply constraints. I mean, if you go to a store and you try to find a PlayStation 5, it's about like the LeBron James Lakers in the playoffs this year. It's just non-existent. You can't find them anywhere. But interestingly enough, the Xbox Series in the last couple of months has started to outsell the PlayStation 5 in a couple of key territories, and this might not be by accident. It does look like Microsoft might have found a way to alleviate some of the stock supply for the Xbox Series, so we're going to go over that one later on in the video. And also here recently, we've gotten a couple of games that are being described as some of the best entries within their respective franchises, and both of those games being Elden Ring and Star Wars The Skywalker Saga has majorly been rewarded, so we're going to talk about those as well. First though, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go down there, hit that bell notification, subscribe, and like button below. That way you can keep up to date with all of the latest gaming news. Besides all that though, we do have plenty of news to go over today, starting off with a new mobile game being Rainbow Six Siege. Now, we did actually talk about this, I want to say about a week or so ago, as Tom Henderson did leak this out online, and he has once again proven to be a legitimate insider. But now it has officially been confirmed by Ubisoft themselves. Rainbow Six Siege is not only just a real thing, but it's about as ambitious as what we were led to believe. I typically don't really talk about mobile games on this channel all that often, but in this situation, I'm going to make an exception because this one, it is looking pretty good. It looks pretty much like what you would expect Rainbow Six Siege to look like. It's got good visuals, it's got that team-based tactical gameplay going on, and now we just kind of got to wait and see how this translates over to mobile devices. With this being such a tactical-based game, I will be interested to see how this works with touch controls per se. I'm also curious about the sound effects. Sound effects in Rainbow Six Siege are very important, but if this is done right, I think that there's a lot of potential here. Even after all these years, I still do believe that Rainbow Six Siege is one of the best competitive shooters on the market. There's nothing else that feels quite like it with its team-based tactical gameplay, and by bringing this over to mobile devices, and even if you don't like mobile, I don't personally myself, but this is a good way of expanding this franchise to more of that widespread audience. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see how all this turns out, but Rainbow Six Siege Mobile is set to release sometime this year in 2022. Next up here, a new game will be releasing on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5 next week on April 14th, being Nobody Saves the World. Now, this is a game that launched on PC and into Xbox Game Pass earlier this year in January, so we do already kind of know that this is a pretty good game here. It is coming from the Guacamelee creator, so that's not really overly surprising, but the big hook in this game is that it is an action RPG where you have a lot of control over your classes. So basically, in Nobody Saves the World, you can combine the various forms and abilities to create your own specific playstyle, and that means if you want to play as a horse magician, yeah, you can absolutely do that. But what about a bodybuilding dragon? Yeah, you can do that as well. You can also play as a zombie mermaid, or a turtle ranger, or even a ghost robot. The combinations just kind of go on, and not only is it humorous, but it's also a lot of fun. On top of that, Nobody Saves the World has cooperative gameplay as well, so if you're looking for something to play with a friend, again, you might want to check this one out when it releases on April 14th for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5. Definitely one of the better hidden gems that has released so far in 2022. Now, another game here that we're going to talk about is actually a game that's set to release tomorrow on April 7th, and that'd be for Chrono The Radical Dreamers Edition. After all of these years, the beloved classic JRPG, which many actually will consider an all-time great within this genre, is finally making its way over to modern hardware. This, however, is a Square Enix remaster, so we got to be real about things. We got to wonder just how much effort they put into this game. And, well, about that, reviews have started to roll out now, and it kind of reveals some things about this game. First off, we'll kind of go into the good, which, yes, there are some minor improvements in this game. It does appear that it might have some higher quality textures. They've also smoothed out the visuals to make it look better on modern hardware. They also improved the text. It's much easier to read this time around, and they've added some extra little features that might make the gameplay feel a little bit less tedious. You can actually turn off encounters if that's something that you're interested in. That will help out with things like New Game Plus, as an example. But unfortunately, unfortunately, something a bit unexpected seems to be happening as well. It is being reported that the Chrono Remaster is experiencing some performance issues, which is a little surprising considering this is a PlayStation 1 game, not necessarily the most graphically demanding game in the world, but at the same time, I'm also hearing that it's not necessarily a deal breaker either. Still though, it is kind of a shame to see this beloved JRPG classic come back and have performance issues at launch. Hopefully it is something that can be fixed up relatively soon with a post-release patch, but I guess we'll just have to kind of see what happens from here. Next up here, we do have an interesting Xbox Series topic to talk about, and I think for most of us, we kind of understood that this generation is going to be much more competitive than what we saw with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. What I don't think a lot of us expected, though, was the type of supply constraints that we've seen this generation thus far. For much of the generation, it's been very difficult finding either one of these consoles, being the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, especially the PlayStation 5. Now here recently, though, it seems like the Xbox Series X has been a little bit more readily available, and there might actually be a reason for that. We'll get back to that here in just a moment, and we'll also talk about the demand for the PlayStation 5 as well. But it is now being reported that the Xbox Series consoles were the #1 best-selling platform in the UK for the month of March, ahead of both of the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5. So that's already noteworthy, but we're also seeing some very similar things in the United States as well. It does look like Xbox did very well in the United States for the month of March. We don't have official numbers on that just yet, but there's some unofficial websites out there that is stating that the Xbox Series might have outsold the PlayStation 5 there as well. So that's a couple of key markets, but we're still kind of waiting for confirmation. It does, however, seem like Xbox has done really well in recent months, especially since the holiday, so there has been this question of what exactly is going on here, and why is PlayStation still struggling so much while it seems like Xbox is kind of improving? Well, we are going to talk about some things that we are starting to hear that might kind of explain this, but first I want to kind of get this out of the way. None of this topic is about demand. It is about supply. Obviously, the PlayStation 5 is still incredibly high in demand, and that's why we continue to see it sell out almost instantaneously. So if they were able to produce as many units as they possibly could, then things might look a lot different right now. But what we're talking about today is about supply. It does seem like Xbox has kind of alleviated some of the supply issues that we have seen since the launch of these consoles. Now, one part of that is the Xbox Series S. We have heard in the past that it is easier to manufacture the Xbox Series S than the Series X and the PlayStation 5, which is why we continue to see more Series S consoles on the market than anything else. But now we're also hearing something a little bit different as well. Now, keep in mind that this is a rumor and nothing is confirmed, but according to Special Nick over on the Xbox Era podcast, he is a well-known insider with a pretty decent reputation, and he claims that the reason that we have been seeing more Xbox stock here in recent months is actually because Microsoft last year paid for chip priority at factories. You can actually take a look over here at his specific statement where he says that around April of last year, I got a DM saying Microsoft's going to have a lot of consoles available this fall, and they did in the end, didn't they? Microsoft paid for chip priority at the factories, which is why we saw so much more and are still seeing so much more Xbox stock now. To me, it's a smart investment. And I do absolutely agree, this is a very smart investment. We are in the midst of a console launch where we have seen a lot of stock shortages throughout the generation, and by paying that extra money to maybe have that chip priority, well, suddenly these Xbox Series consoles are becoming a little bit more readily available. I mean, just a couple of days ago, we were talking about it on the channel, but over on Amazon, there was a big Xbox Series X drop, and unlike past drops that we have seen, it didn't just sell out instantaneously. It was around for a long time. I want to say it was over 24 hours. It is sold out now, but it does kind of line up with what we're hearing. It does seem like Microsoft might have alleviated some of these stock problems. Now, I know this also kind of gives Microsoft a bit of a competitive advantage for at least the short term. We'll see if maybe Sony does something like this in the future as well. But, I mean, one thing that we're really seeing this generation is that Microsoft seems all in on gaming. Not only are they really pushing the Xbox Series hard, but Xbox Game Pass is firing on all cylinders. They're also investing into a ton of different studios. I mean, they just made an acquisition for Activision Blizzard that was nearly $70 billion. That is absolutely insane. Now, we still got to see if that acquisition actually makes it through regulations or not, but nonetheless, it is very clear that Microsoft is all in on gaming this generation, and this is really just the latest on all of that. Nonetheless, though, if all of this report is true, which it does seem, or at least appear to be as of this moment, then do expect more Xbox Series X drops in the coming months. If you are still trying to search and get this console, right now might actually be your perfect opportunity. On to our final topic of the day, though. We do have a couple of games here that are being heavily rewarded for just really how good they are. And the first of which here would be Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. This game did release just yesterday, and currently it's being described as one of the best Star Wars games ever made. So that puts it on a short list of games like Jedi Fallen Order, you have Knights of the Old Republic, Battlefront, and games like that. This one, though, might come off as a little bit more of a surprise, though, coming from the LEGO franchise. But really, ever since they started to showcase this game with some real gameplay, you started to see that this game was actually pretty ambitious, and because of that, it has attracted a lot more attention than your typical LEGO game. In fact, it just broke a record for the LEGO franchise with a new peak high of 82,517 concurrent users. Yes, it broke a record in just 2 hours, and this marks a 1,200% increase over the previous record. Yeah, that's pretty impressive, but just to kind of put things into perspective, I'm actually going to put a list up here showing you the concurrent high for other previous LEGO games, which, as you can see here, LEGO Marvel Superheroes is in second place with only 5,953 concurrent users. Yeah, this is quite a dramatic improvement here, and this just once again kind of shows you if you give these companies enough time to make a good game, look at the type of results that you can see here. Really, this right here is why I don't usually crucify developers for delaying their games. This is a game that was originally supposed to release in late 2020. It then got delayed to 2021 and then finally into 2022, but it definitely seems like they used the most of that extra time here. This is not only believed to be one of the most ambitious LEGO games, but now it's also being viewed as one of the best Star Wars games of all time. Definitely very impressive stuff, and it's really nice to see fans reward them for making such a high-quality game. Now, really, Elden Ring, while yes, a completely different game, has found itself in a bit of a similar situation as well. It broke a lot of ground for the Soulsborne genre this year. I mean, if you think about it, the Soulsborne genre has always been popular among hardcore fans, but it really seems like Elden Ring specifically has broke into that mainstream market. I mean, we're kind of used to seeing games like Call of Duty put up these type of numbers, but in less than a month, Elden Ring sold 12 million units worldwide. And because of that, GameIndustry.biz decided to do a survey where they asked 200 gamers on why exactly did they buy Elden Ring. Now, I would have liked to seen them ask more people here, but still, this will kind of give you some insight on why people purchased Elden Ring. And they did say that 35% of the people that did the survey did purchase Elden Ring, while 24% of those people were entirely new to the genre and had never played a Souls-like game before. That's pretty impressive, but what's even more interesting is that 80% of these new players said that was because of the open world setting, while 67% of them said it was because of the critical reception, while 28% said it was a result of the influencer recommendations. Also, 40% came from friend recommendations, while 27% were apparently drawn to George R.R. Martin's involvement. So I think with some of the statistics that are shown here, what this ultimately tells you is just how important critical and social reception actually is. I think we already kind of knew that in the first place, but I mean, here it just kind of shows you just how important those things truly are. And in both situations, with Elden Ring and with Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, both of these games have been very well received, both critically and among the social crowd. This also tells me how important open world games are, though. 80% said that it was because of an open world setting. Yeah, that kind of shows you why there's been a lot of open world games as of recent. But, I mean, nonetheless, Elden Ring truly, I will just say once again, absolute masterpiece. I really do love that game, and I kind of find myself in a situation that I don't really know what to do with myself after beating that game. Yeah, nothing has really fared in comparison after playing Elden Ring. On to the poll of the day, though. I know that there's obviously going to be a lot of disappointment with E3's cancellation, but here recently we did get a confirmation that Summer Game Fest this year will be taking place in a singular month, being June. That actually sounds like a pretty nice improvement, so I wanted to ask you all, with Summer Game Fest confirmed to have all of its events set in June, are you optimistic about it taking the place of E3? And it does seem like a lot of you are pretty optimistic about this, with 51% of you saying yes, while 36% 36% of you said no. Now, obviously, 36%, that's still a large portion of you all that are pretty concerned about this event, and it really seems to be linked to how Jeff Keighley runs his events. He does have a tendency of making his events overly bloated. He also tends to have a lot of advertisements in his events, and he also likes to kind of make them into big spectacles, meaning that they're not just specifically focused on games. Now, he might treat Summer Game Fest a little bit differently, though, but we definitely see him do that with things such as Gamescom and even the Game Awards. So there's definitely some question marks still, but based off of some of his comments here recently, it does sound like he's trying to listen to fan feedback. So I'm going to just kind of cross my fingers and hope this one turns out to be good. I definitely think there are some positives with transitioning to an E3-like event that takes place throughout an entire month rather than just a couple of days. I think that this could give more exposure to individual publishers, and it could also allow fans to kind of soak it all in just a little bit better as well. So I definitely think that there's some positives here, and yeah, I just want to kind of see how all of this works out this year. I guess we're not going to have to wait too long, though. I mean, really, it's only a couple of months away by this point, and we should start to hear some more official details here soon. Very excited to hear about some of those official details coming from all of the different publishers. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.